Bloke what owns the place was holding a gun too, should have just said fired, bla bla. Aber das hat er doch nicht. Das war falsch, ne? The photograph of the victim found in the store. Da hält er auch keine Gun. Vielleicht ist es das?
Objection!
Es ist tatsächlich das. So you are saying that on the night in question, the victim, Mr. Windybank, was wielding a gun. Is that correct? That's it, Guff. You've got the picture. Yes, Nash, yes, no question. And yet, photographic evidence obtained immediately after the incident clearly shows that Mr. Windybank was not holding a firearm of any description. You what? Gordon Bennett, that ain't right.
Objection!
There can be no question that the victim's revolver was used in the incident. I would remind the court that Mr. Windybank's gun was found at the scene. Not only was it identified as a murder weapon, but it was found in the accused's hand. Ja, was bedeutet das dann für uns? Das ist ja nicht gut. Yeah, the tall mullah used the victim's own gun to finish him off. Give me that gun! Kind of thing.
Hold it!
That's exactly where you are, right there. Eh? If the crime had taken place as you so colorfully described in your testimony, it would give rise to an undeniable and significant inconsistency in the final moments you just acted out. Er wurde doch im Rücken geschossen. Goodness, are you sure, counsel? You intrigue me, my learned friend, but let's see some evidence to support your claim. Where's the proof that demonstrates this inconsistency in the witness portrayal of the victim's final moments? Auch wieder das Foto. Ich speichere nochmal. Ich denke auch wieder das Foto.
Take that!
According to their testimony, the witnesses claimed to have heard a shout of "Give me that gun," followed by the gunshot. Indeed, with the two events happening almost simultaneously, or so we've been led to believe. Yes, that's right. Now, if that testimony is true, it would mean that at the moment of death, the victim and his attacker would have been facing each other. However, if I could ask the court to study the photograph of the victim's body again, you can clearly see that Mr. Windybank was in fact shot from behind. Ah! So, as I stated before, there is an undeniable inconsistency in your testimony, Mr. and Mrs. Skulken. Mr. and Mr. Skulken. Yeah. But it's a God's honest truth. It is, Nash, it is. When he was shot that night, the shopkeeper had a gun in his hand. We saw it with your own bleeding eyes. With our. Did I hear you right just now? You actually saw Mr. Windybank holding a gun? Something like that might have stepped out. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you have all just heard the admission by these two witnesses that on the night in question, they actually saw, with their own eyes, the victim wielding a gun. Which can only mean that despite the testimony to the contrary, the Skulken brothers must have encountered the victim in person. Nash, Order. Witnesses, explain yourselves at once. Well, the thing is, it weren't supposed to, It would seem that my previous warning fell on deaf ears. I made it quite clear that false witness would be the death of you. Am I to understand that you replace the untruth of your original testimony with renewed lies? Ever so sorry, Governor. Truth is Cut it out, Nash, cut it out! If we blab now, you know what it'll do to us. Who are they talking about? Let me make your position here perfectly clear. You will talk. There's no other options available to you. Ruff, come on, the game's up. But you left our guts for gutters. In case it hasn't quite sunk in yet. No matter how hard you try to hide it, the truth will come out. On the night in question, it is now apparent that you brothers met face to face with the victim. I demand that you testify again, to explain the precise circumstances under which this meeting took place. Well... Do we have to? On pain of death. I suggest you make yourself fully aware that this is your very last chance to tell the truth. Oh no. Witness testimony. Encounter with the victim. Alright, so we just got inside the gap and each a sigh or relief when the geezer showed up and showed his mug. Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we'd had it. For an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter. I pulled my gun on him, and then he legged it through the door into the back room. We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's all what happens, I swear. Okay. So you're now telling us that moments before the victim was killed in the storeroom, you in fact encountered him in the main part of the shop. Well, yeah, sorry. Well, we find ourselves at an interesting juncture. This changes matters considerably. But honest, Governor, this time... Jetzt nochmal durchlesen. Alright, so we just got inside the gaff and heaved a sigh of relief when the geezer showed his mark. Give him that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we had it. For an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter. I pulled me gun on him, and then he legged it through that door into the back room. Das heißt legged. Werfen, oder? Legged. Krummbeinig? Nee. Keine Ahnung. Into the back room. We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's all what happened, I swear. But honest, Governor, this time, we ain't got nothing more to hide. Very well. Counsel for the defense, you may proceed with your cross-examination. Yes, my lord. This is it. The moment I've been waiting for. Whew. Cross-examination. Encounter with the victim. Alright, so we just got inside the gap and heaved a sigh of relief when the geezer showed its mark.
Hold it!
When you say geezer, I presume you mean the victim and proprietor of the shop, Mr. Windybank. Who else? Sorry, I mean, that's right. He was keeping a close eye on the entrance to the gaff, obviously. Was heißt gaff? Bude. Ah, okay. But we never thought no one was gonna come out of the back room like that. The back room being the pawnbrokery storeroom. Yeah, that must be where he popped up from. Only place he could have been. So it would seem the victim was already in the storeroom when these brothers entered the premises. Which means Ginny must have been in there at that point as well. But that doesn't make sense, does it? If Gina had threatened Mr. Windybank into the storeroom with her at gunpoint, then why would he have emerged from the same room all alone when the brothers arrived? Oh, I don't know. Did you see the accused at that time? What? That Moltula? Couldn't tell ya. No way, Copper. We had a bigger fish to fry then. I mean, the old geezer just lost it. Okay. Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we had it.
Hold it!
You mentioned that Mr. Windybanks shouted those words in your previous testimony too. However, you claimed that you heard him telling them on the other side of the storeroom door. Oh, hehe, did we? But the truth is, he was shouting those words at you, wasn't he? Well, hehe, yeah. Was the victim Mr. Windybank, wielding a gun at the time? Was he ever? Blimey lummy, a great ugly barrel he had pointed straight in the frontispiece. So what you're saying is, you definitely saw Mr. Windybank with a gun at the time, is that right? It is, Guff, it is. Spot on. Then all of a sudden, he came at us, he did. It was Bedlam. I didn't know who was going for who. We were clearly all going for each other. Like Nash said, we thought we'd had it. I mean... For an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter. Stopp, ich wollte das noch. Er hat ihn über den Counter geworfen. Also über den Tisch.
Hold it!
Yes, I noted that you mentioned the counter in your previous testimony too. Well, yeah, of course we did. He knocked over a load of books, a candlestick, and some sky whatnot. That got tangled in some marionette, what knocked over a picture frame, what knocked some scales on the floor. So in fact, it wasn't the sound of the gunshots that shocked you and made you knock those things off the counter. Well, Big Rock here went flying over the counter like a gunshot, I can tell ya. Then the Ochiza pinned him. He did, Nash, he did. If you hadn't been there, the bloke would have flattened me like a bloomin' pancake in seconds. At the time in question, the alarm was raised at the local police station via a secret cable from the pawnbrokery. There's a button on the counter used to activate it, which was presumably pressed by the victim. Because at the time in question, the alarm was raised at the local police station. Okay. That's right, when the brothers fled the scene and back onto the street, they went straight into the arriving police, didn't they? Poor Mr. Windybank. He did everything he could to protect his shop. I pulled me gun on him and then he legged it through that door into the back room.
Hold it!
Were you intending to shoot Mr. Windybank? No, never. I was just, you know, looking out for me bruv, weren't I? He was being flattened, don't forget. By a man whose shop was being burgled, yes. And then, the man fled into the storeroom when you pointed your gun at him, is that it? Yeah, that's it. He shoved me away, then ran off through that door and shut himself in. There's something about that last remark. Something that doesn't quite ring true. I wonder why Mr. Windybank went away into the storeroom. What? Well, according to what everyone's saying, Ginny was in there waiting for him, with a gun. Ah, yes, that's right. Gina allegedly used Mr. Windybank's gun to threaten him and force him to open the storeroom door. In which case, how did the gun end up in Mr. Windybank's hand again? I have no idea, but that is strange, isn't it? This little inconsistency could be significant. I should make a mental note of it. Okay. Look, the point is me and me proof here. That's right, Nash, that's right. Me and me proof here. We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's all what happened, I swear. I put my gun on him and threw that door into the back room. Oh, boy. Plan of Mr. Windybank's pawnbrokery. Firearm found in the possession of the suspected brothers. There are signs that the thing around was fired. Aber hat die... Too late. Was heißt too late? Die Beine in die Hand nehmen. Ah. Okay. Ich wollte sonst seine Pistole präsentieren, aber er ist dann in den Raum gelaufen. Okay. The plan of Windybank's pawnbrokery, the scene of the crime. Crime scene photograph.
Objection!
Okay, nö. Nee. I pulled my gun on him and then he legged it through the door into the back room. We never had nothing to do with killing him, that's all what happened, I swear.
Hold it!
You say you had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Nothing, Gaff, nothing. The old geezer went and shut himself in the back room, didn't he? Locked it was, from the inside. We know it was, cause we tried to open it. But it's a decent door, that one. Good and strong, wouldn't budge an inch. So in the end, the situation remains unchanged. Aber wie ist Gina dann reingekommen? Inside the storeroom with the pawnbroker, there was only one other person. So person who could possibly have shot. Oh, müssen wir das Bild mit Gina präsentieren, weil sie ihn da quasi reingezwungen hat. Also wusste, okay. Verstehe es. Ah. It would indeed appear so. What say you to that, counsel? I don't know. Was there anyone else apart from Gina who could possibly have shot Mr. Windybank? That could have been. I don't know. Mr. and Mr. Skalken. What? What's that look for? From the moment you admitted that you'd encountered the victim face to face that night. The course of this trial changed completely. It did. What is your point, my learned friend? The question we must answer is who could have shot Mr. Windybank? And it is the belief of the defense that the defendant is not the only possible answer at all. Okay, dann war ich grad falsch mit meiner Überlegung. You have my attention. In that case, let us return to this plan of the premises. The victim was killed in the storeroom, which was locked from the inside. Those are the facts. So pray, what other possible answer to the question of who shot the man could be here? Counsel, you must now provide answers to the court in respect of two conundrums. Two, my lord. Twice as many chances to be right, maybe? Indeed, namely, from what location did the culprit shoot the victim? And furthermore, where was the victim at the time? Oh god. Understood, my lord. Are you a white winner? I'm not entirely sure, but there's one thing I am sure about. If I can prove that there's a credible new alternative to what happened, it would change Gina's prospects hugely. Okay, stand dann außerhalb der Tür und hat die Luke aufgemacht, oder was? So now time for some clarity. Show the court in this plan the answers to the questions posed by his lordship. If you believe someone else could have killed the victim, indicate from where the person could have fired the gun. Ich speichere. Von hier.
Take that!
The defense believes that the culprit could have shot the victim from this location here. And in answer to the second question, assuming the culprit fired from the location indicated, where was the victim at the time?
Take that!
Die Musik hat gestoppt, das ist ein gutes Zeichen. The culprit shot the victim from outside the storeroom. Continue. Mr. Windybank died instantly from a bullet wound in his back. Looking at the stain of blood on the storeroom floor, it doesn't appear that the body was moved after death, which tells us that he was almost certainly shot while he was in the storeroom. However, the crucial point is, where was the shooter when the fatal bullet was fired? So you are adamant that the shot was fired from outside the storeroom? Well, according to the Skulkin brothers' earlier testimony, I pulled my gun on him, and then he legged it through that door into the back room. If Mr. Windybank went away through the door, we have to assume that the door was open at the time. Ah! It was at precisely that moment, when the victim was fleeing for his life. Okay. Ich hätte jetzt gedacht durch das Fenster von der Tür, aber wenn die Tür dann auch offen war, geht's natürlich noch einfacher. That the brothers had the perfect opportunity to shoot the man in the back once he was inside the storeroom. No! Come to think of it, do you remember what the prosecutor said at the start of the trial? Moving on to the findings of Scotland Yard's coroner, his report states that the bullet entered the body on a rising diagonal trajectory. It means the victim was likely shot by someone significantly shorter in height than himself, also Wingo, der Kleine. Poor man, shot while he was running as fast as he could to safety. Ah, of course. He would have been leaning forward as he was running away. So even if the bullet was fired horizontally, it would still have entered his body on an upward trajectory. So the culprit isn't necessarily someone shorter than Mr. Windybank.
Objection!
I'm sure my learned friend can't have forgotten that the storeroom door was found closed and locked from the inside. He claims the victim was shot as he fled into the room. Do you also claim his corpse was dexterous enough to turn the key in the lock? Nee, das war dann... Ja, war das dann? Es wird ja nicht viel Sinn machen, wenn Lestrade das dann gemacht hat. Ah, but... What if someone else locked the door? Yes, there's someone else who could have locked the storeroom door. Is that so? Very well then, counsel. Present your hypothesis to the court. In the scenario just described, the defense's assertion is that the victim was shot from outside the storeroom. In which case, who shot and locked the storeroom door from the inside? Auch die... Dick und doof? I mean, die könnten ja vielleicht reinreachen durch das Fenster. Sonst würde ich halt sagen, Lestrade, aber...
Take that!
Obviously, that person could only have been... Just a moment, Bruno. What? I'm just about to point dramatically at the prosecution and unveil an amazing revelation. Sorry, but just before you do, maybe you should take a deep breath and think things through about one more time. The storeroom was locked from the inside, so whoever locked it must have been inside. Must have been inside too, don't you think? Ah, like Mr. Windybank, you mean? Well, yes, except that he was dead. But here's someone else it could have been. Only one other person, really. Oh, only one other. Ja, okay, das ist Gina. Gina. Oh nein, das hat weh. Das hat richtig schön vibriert auf dem Controller. Gina.
Take that!
17 is yes, okay. Obviously, the person who locked the door was the only other person inside the storeroom at the time. The defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade.
Objection!
That's absurd. You're suggesting that the accused deliberately engineered the sealed room. For what possible reason? Such actions would only serve to tighten the noose around her neck. I am inclined to agree, I must say. Well, counsel? Ah, yes, that's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Half-baked notions have no place in my courtroom, counsel. Remember that, please. But of course, Ginny would have locked the door. It almost goes without saying, doesn't it? It does? Well, if I was Ginny in that situation, I know I would have locked the door, as quickly as I could. Oh ja, weil da ja Mörder draußen waren. I mean... Those two burglars had just fired the gun in a direction, hadn't they? Oh yes, obviously. Before the two brothers arrived, Mr. Straight and Mr. Windybank were in the storeroom together. Now, I don't know what went on between them at the time, but at some point, Mr. Windybank must have heard the intruders breaking into his shop and left the storeroom. Intruders, eh? That's us, bruv. If your theory is correct, that would leave the accused alone in the storeroom. Yes, it would. Then, probably only moments later, the victim fled back through the storeroom door, hoping to escape danger. Hit in the back by the bullet, Mr. Windybank fell to the floor where he was, just inside the storeroom. And what we have to ask ourselves now is, what would the defendant have done in that moment? Ah, I see where you're going with this. Outside the storeroom was a terrifying killer who had just murdered Mr. Windybank. As soon as a thought struck Mr. Straight, she slammed the door shut and locked it, in order to save her own life.
Hold it!
But I mean, we ain't the ones who done it. We ain't, Guff, we ain't. You've gotta believe us. I mean, come on, we'd never shoot no one.
Objection!
That's blatantly untrue. I know for a fact that you would. Because before my own eyes, you shot Mr. Sherlock Jones. There's only one logical conclusion here. Mr. and Mr. Skyclad, you brothers had every opportunity to have been the true perpetrators of Mr. Windybank's murder. Ich glaube, die schreien einfach so. Where does this leave us? You mean to say it wasn't the pickpocket who shot the pawnbroker after all? I should have known it was those three brothers. They look as shady as a dance. That was amazing, you know. All the members of the jury seem to be firmly on your side now. I know, first time ever, and probably the last. Well, I think you've done it. Surely they'll have to give a verdict of not. Oh no. An admirable effort, my learned friend. What's this now? Ja, sie hatte die Waffe noch in der Hand. He's laughing. Und sie haben nur einmal geschossen und das war auf Sherlock. Der ist noch zu viel. You find the situation amusing, Lord von Sieks? I myself find the defense's argument most persuasive. I dare say. Such chicanery is the bread and butter of the street performers in your provincial eastern nation. But such blatantly malicious conjuring tricks amount to nothing more than inexcusable pettifoggery here. What? The hypothesis you put forward so ostensibly credibly cannot and will not stand. Because, you see, it contains a fatal flaw. Hör doch auf, a fatal flaw. Do you mean to tell me that you are unaware of your logic's failing? I say, Lord von Sieks, might be an idea to explain this bally conjuring trick, or whatever it is, to the troops on the ground. The fatal flaw in my learned friend's argument is really very simple to understand. Assuming you're not too dim-witted to count bullets. By George, count bullets! Oh dear. He noticed them. Huh? What's everyone talking about? Counsel. Yes, sir? Tell the court, how many bullets were found at the scene of the crime? Two bullets. Correct. The first that which hit the victim in the back, ending his life. And the second that which struck the detective, Mr. Sherlock Jones, on his arrival at the scene. Indeed. The defense presented a picture showing the damage caused by the second bullet earlier in the proceedings. The bullet which injured Mr. Jones appears to have passed through his body to strike the calendar. Your lordship's understanding is correct. Furthermore, we know there are two firearms involved in the incident. The revolver belonging to the victim, Mr. Windybank, and the Skyclad brothers' revolver. The evidence shows that a single bullet was fired from each gun. Yes, indeed it does. A single bullet from each. Now then, my learned friend. You yourself told the court only moments ago that these two brothers shot Mr. Sherlock Holmes right before your eyes. Yes, I did. Oh my goodness, I think you'll find that if the single bullet that was fired from the brother's gun hit Mr. Sholmes, it means Windybang not shot by the same gun. Stop. Only one bullet. Stop. Exactly. Yes, this Nipponese street performer presented an ostensibly credible argument. However, it was never anything more than a diversionary trick with no hope of standing up to scrutiny. Wow! Okay, shit, eh? Order, order, order. Pray, forgive the discourtesy of flinging the dregs of this hallowed nectar into the public gallery, Lord von Zieks. But this court needs to open its eyes. The accused, Miss Gina Lestrade, is no ordinary little girl. Despite her young years, she can, regrettably, no longer be described as a juvenile. No, the person in the dock is far from a law-abiding citizen. She has a past riddled with criminal conduct. Oh no. Packt ihr jetzt das aus? The truth is, the accused broke into the pawnbrokery on the night in question, with loathsome intent. As we can see beyond doubt in this print, which depicts her threatening the victim with a murder weapon. And I have here in my possession one more piece of evidence the prosecution wishes to present. Oh no. That disc! I'll be taking that whatever it is to McGilda's down to the yard. Thank you very much. No, don't give it to him. It's mine, that is. Mine. I'm sorry, miss, but anything belonging to McGilda has to be taken in as evidence now. Yes, that music box disc. McGilda's music box disc. The very day before the hateful murder of Mr. Windybank, the accused attempted to make off with this article, which clearly doesn't belong to her, and with none other of the subtlety of a pickpocket, I might add, but by brute force and brazen impudence. Good gracious! Make no mistake, any sympathy for the accused on account of her years is misguided and dangerous. There are no depths to which this girl would not stoop if punished, if pushed, no crime she would not commit. The court forgets the fact at its peril. I see. Was? I think it would be prudent to take this music box disc into evidence, counsel, as a grim testament to the defendant's Lord von Zieks, okay. Inspector Gregson. What? Yes, Inspector. We had a meeting yesterday at the yard with the prosecution service, and, I think it was agreed that, that disc wouldn't be used as evidence. Okay. What's this all about? Why is the inspector acting strangely? That's the first time he said anything to Van Zieks at all. I am unaware of any such meeting. But those were the instructions right from the top. The government bigwigs were insistent. Okay, Van Zieks gegen die Regierung. Interessant. Inspector, I am the prosecutor and I alone determine how to present my case. Your warning is noted. Thank you. The prosecution wishes to proceed with submitting this disc as evidence, my lord. Indeed, bailiff. The music box disc has been entered into the court record. A metal disc used to play music in a mechanical music box. On the reverse side is a note that reads for McGilda. The prosecution has established the accused's motive, opportunity, and baseness of character. There's nothing more to add. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I await your informed decisions and rest my case. I don't believe it. I had the jury on my side for once, for all of 5 minutes. Oh dear, it wasn't even for 5 minutes, you know. My lord! Wonder if I might say something at this point. Proceed, Mr. Foreman. Been stumbling about in a bit of fog up to now, if truth be told, but all of a sudden, the answer's poorly obvious to me and my man. There's only one thing for it. Oh no. Okay, very well, the court will hear from the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you will present your leanings as to the defendant's culpability.
Guilty.
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 Let's proceed with another summation examination. We have a consensus among the jury, it seems. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth. Das ist ein Sherlock Holmes Zitat, ja? Was soll das? That's my line. I wrote that for Hurley. Siehst du? Ah, how dare he use it against us? Don't worry, Iris. I don't think we are finished yet. There's still more to this case than we realize. There must be, because there's one thing that I'm absolutely certain of. Gina didn't shoot Mr. Windybank. That's beyond any doubt. Very well. We will proceed with the second summation examination of the day. Mr. Foreman, are you and the other jurors ready? Garrett, that squadron is primed and ready for action, sir. Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have now determined the defendant to be guilty.